In the oldest and deepest memories of the earth, the existence of certain lives is itself an immovable gray mountain. In that distant era when birds had not yet fully ruled the skies, one of the most incredible and wondrous creatures ever to exist walked upon the earth. He possessed an exceptionally dense coat of fine, hair-like proto-feathers, a rarity 150 million years ago, with a spectacularly bushy, squirrel-like tail that could almost completely envelop his tiny frame when unfurled. Yet, unlike his fierce relatives who dashed frantically across the Solnhofen plains, ripping small lizards apart with sharp teeth, his eyes always carried a touch of otherworldly tameness and restraint. This tiny creature, born of the forest, chose neither a brutal end in combat nor a despairing cry of starvation in his final days. Tonight, by the faintly flickering hearth, let us step into his true life with this story that requires no effort to remember. Sauromys rongrong. In the cold archives of paleontological fossils, this name usually denotes a small, flawlessly preserved theropod dinosaur that lived in the ancient island forests of Europe. But in the true night of the late Jurassic, an era filled with violent tectonic shifts and botanical profusion, rongrong lived as an inward enigma through a near-instinctual contentment. This is not a loud epic praising bloody conquest and the jungle laws of documentaries, but a midnight lullaby of how to release tension amidst the storm and fall into a peaceful sleep within a cozy tree hollow. 150 million years ago, the Solnhofen archipelago of ancient Germany was forever filled with a slightly briny, earthy fragrance born of vaporizing seawater. It was an era of giant sauropods and frenzied predators trampling the inland plains, their massive bodies shattering the forest floor ferns with a desperate crunching sound at every step. The first turning point of rongrong's destiny was driven by a rare polar cold wave that lasted for months, freezing large expanses of the once island climate overnight. As the temperature plummeted sharply, low-lying shrubs and insects died in mass, plunging the entire forest order into absolute collapse under panic and starvation. Colossal compsognathids and early aviolans with razor-sharp teeth fought frantically beneath the dense canopy for the last remaining hollow trunks that could block the wind, their dull roars echoing through the wilderness. Rongrong stood right at the edge of this violent game. As a juvenile Sauromys only dozens of centimeters long, he naturally held no voice in this internal friction of the crowd that he watched his once playmates tear each other's soft plumage to pieces in mutual slaughter, their blood staining the withered moss, the tension turning the entire forest into a cage of anxiety. Following a piercing instant when a panicked, raging predator nearly crushed his spine under a hardened foot, a profound rift of exhaustion tore open deep within Rongrong's heart. He realized that the panic and ugliness displayed by his self-proclaimed strong relatives when facing the era's cold wave were far more suffocating than the cold itself. He did not meet the greedy glares of the predators, nor did he attempt to assemble a tiny clan of his own. Instead, on an evening when the last warmth receded, he turned his small body with agonizing slowness. Stepping upon the frost-dusted red soil, he moved like a pine needle drifting silently through time. Without a single shred of regret, he walked away from that frantic territory, step by step, toward the quiet wilderness forgotten by the behemoths. Leaving the noisy clan meant Rongrong had to face the adult nocturnal predators operating on laws of lightning-fast slaughter alone, such as the agile dromaeosaurids and primitive mammals wandering deep in the woods. In an ancient conifer forest devoid of open sightlines, a single second of misjudgment meant a cat-sized life would be ruthlessly erased by the dark. Yet within Rongrong's tiny, lightweight frame flowed a near-detached certainty. He could not learn to dash frantically through fallen leaves to prove his existence like the predators did. Instead, he chose to carry absolute relaxation into his very marrow. He walked so slowly, because his massive, thickly feathered tail required considerable energy. His slender hind limbs paused in the air for seconds with each step, his wide feet producing a soft, gentle rustling on the damp bark. His posture did not resemble a retreat, but rather an act of using his body to stroke and perceive every breath and pulse of the earth. This slowness, ironically, created a beautiful resonance between him and the surrounding night. The long trek accumulated deep, blunt pain in his muscle fibers, and the chimneys of cold air brought by the polar airflow seeped inch by inch through his exposed scales, sending an icy stiffness through his blood. He had to find a sanctuary completely sealed from the bitter cold before his strength vanished entirely. In this cruel night, the wisdom of survival was never determined by physical might, but by who could be the first to find an absolute haven to anchor the soul within a world filled with crisis. Finally, as night fell completely and the clamor of the plains withered away, he discovered an exceptionally hidden tree hollow washed out by time at the base of a towering ancient ginkgo tree. It was a corner accidentally sealed by nature, the thick trunk blocked the piercing sea winds entirely, while the loose leaves piled inches deep inside radiated an enchanting, subtle fragrance of conifer resin. Rongrong stopped slowly at the lip of the hollow, gently opening his dark liquid eyes that appeared remarkably clear on his tiny face. The panic of the past several days finally found a harbor to snuggle into within this green stillness. In the shallow documentaries of later generations that obsess over behemoth battles, the petite Cyurumomus is routinely marginalized, as if its sole purpose was to be a mere ornament for giant carnivores or early crocodilomorphs. Yet this arrogant view completely fails to read the profound wisdom of restraint in Rongrong's bones. His smallness was not a flaw, but an invisible shield allowing him to masterfully evade the storms of the era. On the very first night after settling into this warm hollow, danger inevitably pierced the forest's defense, descending upon this quiet sanctuary in its coldest form. A primitive, ancestral avian-like dinosaur, several times Rongrong's size and weak from a prolonged lack of prey, followed the faint trace of life, slipping silently to the edge of the hollow on noiseless talons. It was a silent gamble of will and survival unfolding in absolute quiet. The predator's eyes, glowing with a ghostly green light, moved through the dark like a shifting signpost of death, its heavy breath chilling the surrounding air. The ancient cicadas singing in the dark folded their wings instantly, the shrubs fell deathly still, and the moisture in the air seemed to freeze into ice under the carnivore's ravenous gaze. Yet, facing an ambush terrifying enough to shatter the souls of any small species, Rongrong displayed a near-sacred, breathtaking composure. He released no useless whimpers to vent his fear, nor did he bolt frantically like his kin. Instead, he dropped his center of gravity entirely, tucking his tiny body perfectly into the deepest, dead corner of the tree hollow. He ceased all movement completely, burying his head deep between his slender forelimbs and raising his massive, bushy tail high, shielding his most vulnerable neck and belly. In the occasional flash of lightning tearing the night, this great feathered tail formed a natural, furry protective wall within the hollow, not only blocking outward vision but exuding a freezing camouflage of absolute stillness. The ferocious predator lingered at the entrance for a full half-hour, scratching large flakes of bark away with sharp talons, yet it could never determine if the stationary black shadow inside was indeed a warm, edible life. Rongrong just lay there, maintaining an absolute, statue-like stillness, his respiration slowing to a near imperceptible rhythm. Ultimately, before Rongrong's rock-like, unshakable restraint, the madness in the predator's eyes was replaced by despondency, forcing it to retreat step by step into the dark forest floor below. With the thrilling confrontation dissolved, midnight in the late Jurassic welcomed its most tender and fated hour. The heavy clouds finally split under the night wind, and a faint, emerald-tinted moonlight filtered through gaps in the canopy, illuminating the steady night rain falling outside and drawing all shadows into an endless symphony. Raindrops tapped upon the tall redwood needles, producing a rhythmic clicking that converged into a deeply healing, hypnotic white noise across the ancient valley. With the danger gone, Rongrong completely released all residual tightness, beginning an exquisitely restorative, immersive pre-sleep ritual inside this sanctuary meant for him alone. Because his body was so miniature, he possessed the most luxurious winter bed of the Jurassic when paired with his thickly plumaged tail, which equaled his entire body length. He began to move, adjusting his short limbs with a near slow-motion elegance, stubbornly curling his frame into a perfectly rounded ball amidst the soft leaves. Then, inch by inch, he pulled over his long, bushy tail, which carried a subtle scent of dried hay, like a delicate down blanket gifted by nature. He wrapped himself tightly from head to toe, leaving only the tiny, rounded tip of his muzzle exposed to the warm air, subconsciously regulating each drawn-out, deep breath. The warmth from within penetrated his fine subcutaneous fat, swathed his tense nerve fibers, and rapidly spread to every organ dulled by the cold, dispelling the sticky anxieties within his body. In this ultimate quietude and the natural embrace of the foliage, Rongrong felt he was no longer a wandering refugee, but the most essential pinecone belonging to this ancient tree and this forest. The night pressed the mute button on the ancient storms. The patter of the rain softened into the most soothing lullaby. Cradled by this solid cocoon of safety provided by his own bushy tail, Rongrong's eyelids grew as heavy as mountains, his consciousness drifted away in the warm embrace, dissolving into a gentle, velvety void. The end of life arrived silently and without a sound. For Rongrong, it was merely the most peaceful and enchanting evening among countless deeply comfortable rainy nights. It was an ordinary end to a dry season eons before the Cretaceous extinction, the air carrying the subtle bitterness and caramel aroma of lush gymnosperms, while thousands of gentle meteors streaked across the dark sky. Rongrong was too old. His skeleton had accumulated countless hairline fractures from navigating dense woods and braving cold currents, and every movement of his massive tail required enduring a blunt ache deep within his joints. Yet he showed no panic of finality. On that star-filled night, he simply returned to the center of the tree hollow that had accompanied him for a lifetime, curling up slowly in his most familiar posture that he cradled his tired head gently within the leaf bed, wrapping himself tightly for the last time with his plush tail. The coarse yet warm texture of the plumage brought an ultimate sense of liberation and reconciliation to his fading life force. As the warm gravity of the earth took full custody of his frame, a localized mudslide triggered by prolonged rain sent soft, fine limestone sand pouring smoothly into the deepest cavity of the hollow. Without fear, and without a single cry, this supreme master of relaxation slipped directly from mortal dreams into eternal sleep, tucked inside his favorite feathered blanket and cradled by the comforting white noise of rain. Over the next 150 million years, oceans turned into lands. This ancient European continent underwent countless rifts and reshapes, its once flourishing islands compressing into the cold alpine strata of today. Yet Rongrong's body, perfectly curled and tightly sealed under limestone sand, underwent mineralized change, fusing beautifully with the cold stone until every tiny vertebra and trace of plush feather became an exquisite part of the Earth's skeleton. 150 million years passed like an invisible torrent, washing away all pride and arrogance, yet freezing Rongrong's restraint and tranquility forever within the ribs of the Earth. Now, this specimen, hailed as one of the most perfectly preserved dinosaur fossils in the world, rests silently inside the climate-controlled central display case of the Natural Museum, exuding a serene presence under the soft light. The river that once accompanied him for eons has long dried up, and those towering ginkgo trees have transformed into coal deep underground, yet the breathing rhythm Rongrong left behind on that night seems to echo faintly under the modern city's night sky. In this modern world filled with survival anxieties, where everyone is forced to sprint and crushed by life's heavy pace, this story of an ancient little beast lowering its head inside a tree hollow, sleeping in slow motion within its bushy tail, is your most grounded sanctuary tonight. There is no need to ponder tomorrow's hustles, nor any reason to mind the mundane conflicts that leave you exhausted and tight. The earth will cradle your tired body with the gentlest gravity and endless night, just as it accepted Rongrong eons ago. Right now, your pillow radiates the perfect temperature, and your soft duvet offers the most comforting physical embrace, mirroring that plush, long tail that wrapped safely around Rongrong tens of millions of years ago. Outside the window, a modern city wind might be blowing, the curtains swaying slightly in the dark. These are but gentle echoes of the breeze from that ancient valley traveling through deep time. Drop all defenses and weight from your heart, listen to this story that requires no effort to remember, and let your slow, deep, and measured breathing carry you away. Slowly, close your eyes. Good night, Rongrong the Sayurumamus. Good night, to every soul shedding its heavy armor tonight, returning to an inner mountain-like peace.